Hello and welcome to another exciting episode. As usual, Mickaeel Collier is here. He's the Deputy CEO of the OCA Foundation in South Africa. We're going to tell you more about that. And he's also a political analyst. Mickaeel, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us.
I know that you've been a very busy man everywhere, involved with lots of things and lots of issues happening in society, from the political side down to OCA. Now, that's something I want to talk about right now, and that's the OCA Foundation and the concept of waqf in Islam. If you could maybe take us through that.
Okay, thank you very much for having us over here. It's the National OCA Foundation of South Africa and OCA of SA in short. In 2000, the year 2000, the OCA Foundation of South Africa was established in order to establish an endowment or pious endowment fund for the benefit of the Muslim and general South African society. So basically the concept of waqf entails giving a portion of your particular wealth, placing it in trust, in perpetuity, for the pleasure of Allah, for the pleasure of God, but for the benefit to accrue to the local community. So people historically, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ introduced the concept of waqf as a means of sustainable development, sustainable community development. So what happens is that the capital or the corpus of that waqf or that portion of your wealth that you have dedicated remains intact, but the return of the investment is used for various community projects and benefit projects. So we've got in the history of OCA, which is basically the plural of the waqf, you had the clinics, hospitals, education facilities, agricultural land, the hospitality industry for wayfarers and travelers was basically catered and looked after out of the waqf system. And that was the contribution that civil society had towards community development and sustainable community development.
So basically, handing your funds over to an organization like yourself means that the money is not actually going and simply saying, okay, we're collecting money for a blanket drive. The money is going into a capital pool that generates more funds, and that's the difference.
That's basically what the concept of waqf is. In Islam, you've got various products, or if you can just in layman's terminology, within the Islamic economy. So you've got sadaqah, which is the dispensing of your wealth for particular purposes, particular projects, poverty alleviation, etc. You've got zakah, which is an institution which is compulsory, a compulsory portion of your wealth that is dedicated for poverty alleviation and various other categories of society that that is eligible to receive that particular benefit, and we know that the various 8 categories of zakah. The system of waqf is a more long-term, more sustainable type of development that is built into the Islamic economy. So basically, as I've said, that corpus remains intact, the capital remains intact, but the yield, the return of the investment from now until the end of time is used for its particular stated purpose. So we've seen in the glorious days of the Islamic civilizations in the Ottoman Empire and in other empires like the Umayyads in Spain, the waqf system was used to fund education, to fund hospitals, as I've mentioned before, to fund various other necessities that civil society required. So, for example, in the Ottoman Empire, you had the Sultanate or the government looking after administrative affairs of that particular empire, and you had civil society coming in and saying that I want to benefit from now in my life and also after my death. And therefore people dedicated a portion of their wealth, whether it was a property or a section of their crops or whatever the case may be, to that particular system to cater to the needs of society. So what you found in essence was that somebody would be born and he would be born in a hospital that was Waqf, right, which was for the benefit of the community. He would grow up, he would go to a school that was a Waqf school, right, or community endowment school. He'd get married, and they had a Waqf which was dedicated to young couples, right, who could not afford to get married. So they would set them up in a house for 2 years or so. They would provide them their bridal clothes, they'd give them a stipend, they'd get them on their feet. And then that person moved off into maybe university or into other forms of life, also in the Waqf system. And eventually that person would die, would be shrouded in a Waqf which was provided, the kafan or the burial cloth, and would ultimately be buried in a cemetery that was also part of the Waqf system.
So it's the whole circle.
It's a full circle, up to the extent that it provided a complete means of poverty eradication and alleviation, because remember, the capital stays intact, but the return of the investment is used for the various projects. Up to the extent that 60% of agricultural land under the Ottoman Empire was part of the Waqf system. So it looked at food security, it looked at sustainable growth, sustainable development, and that was when Islam as a civilization basically flourished, where there was no need. At a particular given time within that period of Islamic history, there weren't even people who were eligible for the zakah, which was the immediate relief mechanism of poverty alleviation.
Now, something very interesting that you are saying is that this is your contribution is an insurance in the hereafter also. So in the end of the day, it's reminding me of something in particular, and that is that it's an old saying that says that whatever you keep for yourself, you will lose, and whatever you give to others will be yours forever. And it's that yours forever in the hereafter, because you are contributing to something that even after your demise, there's this continual and residual turnaround and community development because of what you've done in your lifetime. And that's a principle on which you seem to operate.
No, definitely. The concept of Waqf is found in the Quran, where Allah says, a loan to Allah, a beautiful loan, right? And further on, the Prophet ﷺ said that when the son of Adam dies, he leaves behind three things. Right, a sadaqah jariyah, a perpetual charity, which is the waqf, knowledge that is beneficial to human beings, and a pious child that will make dua for the deceased parent. Right, so those are basically the three things that carry on with you in perpetuity. So as you said, what we plant now, we reap the benefits later on. And that is basically the system of waqf. We're saying it's a different way of how we spend our resources within our community in order to ensure a long-term sustainable approach to development for our particular community. So what we're saying is, if we create and we foster this concept of waqf throughout society, and we proliferate it throughout society, what we will have is, we'll have a situation where in the next 5 to 10 years, we don't need people coming to knock on the door of business people to say, we need money to run a small particular project. And this is a trap that, whether it's a Muslim organization, non-Muslim organization, throughout NGO, civil society operations, people always struggle with the budget. So what we're saying is, if we perpetuate and proliferate this concept of waqf as a means of community self-sustainability and self-reliance, we will change the nature of the type of work that we are able to do, right? The quality of work, and also the extent of work. And that has a knock-on effect, because that then changes society, right, for the better. And it also acts as a means to eradicate or various social ills within our particular communities.
I think we have a good understanding now of the concept of waqf, because normally the only time that many of us see the term is when we open up a little Quran in the mosque and you see waqf written on there. But I think you've expounded on the broader concept and the actual concept of what waqf is. Now, the Okaf Foundation South Africa, which you serve as the Deputy CEO. I spoke to the CEO this morning, Mr. Zainul Kaji, I think up in Johannesburg, I think.
That's good.
Now, he's got this thing that started 15 years ago. I saw in your booklet he's a founding CEO, and I take it you play a big role there too. Where, when, why, and how did that all happen?
Well, as you mentioned, Zainul Kaji was a pioneer amongst other pioneers within the organization. In 1980, the concept started, or at least the revival of the concept
I'm trying
started.
to think, where was I? Okay, right. Okay.
So you've got it.
Yes.
So they attended a conference that the Islamic Development Bank in Jeddah was hosting, and part of that was a discussion or revival of the concept of Waqf, because after the colonial period hit the Muslim world globally, right, the institution of Waqf was also one of those institutions that were thrown by the wayside.
Sort of took a nosedive.
It took a nosedive, or at least the real concept behind it took a nosedive. So people knew that there is this concept, as you said, the Quran or the mosque itself, etc. But the real developmental aspect behind that was kind of lost. So from 1980s, Zainul Kaji, Ismail Munshi, a few other people started doing research on this particular topic, and in the year 2000, in Ramadan, we decided that it's actually very ripe for us to launch this particular concept in South Africa, to reintroduce it at least into our communities. So that was more or less around the time of the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development that took place in South Africa.
So there was an awareness around that.
There was an awareness around that. And then we started off, OCAF started off by running the first conference on Muslim sustainability in the world. Right? And then the issues of Waqf and Zakah and the natures of the two types of modalities within Islamic finance came about. And from there, we basically grew, and we generated certain awareness campaigns, certain projects, certain symposiums on it. So as an organization, we concentrate primarily on reintroducing or reviving the concept of Waqf as a means of sustainable development. Secondly, we try to grow our capital fund so that we've got more money in order to spend on community projects or downstream projects, as we call it. And the third aspect is where we like to introduce seeded projects, right? Projects that is not necessarily the core function of the OCAR Foundation, but projects that have a benefit to South African Muslim community as well as South Africa in general. Because the challenge that we have as Muslims in South Africa is that from our history of about 350 years, we had people like Sheikh Yusuf that contributed to the growth and development, the fight against apartheid, the fight against colonial rule. The challenge that we have in the democratic dispensation is that you don't find people fighting, if you can call it that, in the streets anymore, because the nature and the dynamic of our society is different. But yet Muslims still need to contribute to the growth and development of South Africa. And we locate ourselves and we view ourselves as an integral part of the landscape of this particular country. But the nature in which we contribute has obviously changed. And part of the change is this particular Waqf system that we hope to introduce, revive on a big scale within our local communities and also nationally, in order to bring about projects that will ensure sustainability of our community, whether it's in the health sector, maths and science education sector, and various other sectors of our society. So in 2004, part of our track record, if I can tell you, is that we launched a program on the 200 years of the unbanning of Islam. Islam was a banned religion in South Africa, and 2004 not only symbolized 10 years of democracy, but it also symbolized the 200th year of the unbanning of Islam. So we ran that project. We also ran projects on Islamic civilization in Southern Africa, which we did in conjunction with IRSICA, which is the research wing of the OIC countries, and various other projects that have also been manifested as a result of the National OCAR Foundation of South Africa.
Now, 15 years is a long time, and any organization throughout that time developing a brand and organization, there are challenges that goes along, and one that settles those challenges, and then there are new challenges as we head into new dimensions within our community. Like now, the world and South African Muslims at large have new challenges that face us. What are some of the challenges that faces OCAF as it is today? Is it education to the public? Is it the aspect of trying to bring in more funding and making people understand what the operations of these organizations is? Are they human capital? What are these challenges?
Well, I think then, because we're part of a community on a local level and also nationally and internationally, I think the challenges that face all of us are quite similar, right? So for us, the first challenge is to proliferate the message of Waqf and what it means as a means to change our communities.
South African Muslims, have they taken to that concept
Well,
well?
it's an ongoing, and definitely people we come with a background where we understand what Waqf is, but we didn't understand that there is necessarily a developmental aspect associated to it. So that continuous ongoing educational program is forthcoming, to the extent that recently we've launched the Buland Islamic Council's Waqf, right, where we will try and change and turn around the towns within the Buland area, utilizing the concept of Waqf and sustainable development. So people have bought into the idea. It makes sense even to a businessman when you tell him the 1,000 rand donation that you're going to give is not going to be lost in a normal project, but the 1,000 rand remains intact. It's just a return that gets used for its particular purpose. Yeah. So it makes sense to people, and it's logical and it's rational, and over time you will see the benefit of that particular program. So yes, that is a challenge to educate the masses, to educate our communities about it. The bigger challenge that we feel is that the social dynamics within South African society, the high levels of unemployment, the high levels of poverty, the high levels of various social ills that plague our society. And as members of South Africa, right, we do not see ourselves as a Muslim community that sits on the periphery of society. The nature of Muslims is that we have to be active participants in the process of change and societal change, and we have to be part of it. And therefore we need to have mechanisms which the Islamic model brings, and educates us and teaches us. We need to translate that not only to the benefit of the Muslim community, but for South Africa in general. So that is the type of direction we as an organization would like to go in, is to say that we are part of a larger, as a Muslim community, we are part of a larger community of South Africans, and the challenges that face somebody who is hungry is not the hungry stomach, does not need to be a Muslim stomach or feel different to a Christian stomach or to a Jewish stomach or to a Hindu stomach, right, or even to a non-believer stomach, right? At the end of the day, if you're hungry, right, it affects you the same way. If you have gang violence in a particular community, if you have low levels of education, or if you have challenges to that education or accessing education, it affects everybody, right? And that is what we need to change around.
I totally love the idea that you're saying that, because I've been an advocate of that for a long time, and that is that a lot of people come to us and they say, there's an old Sikh Muslim lady that needs a wheelchair. And I always tell them, just tell me it's an old Sikh lady, because a Sikh person is a Sikh person,
sure,
and an old person is an old person. Mickaeel, we're going off to an ad break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about that exciting project you have, and that's the cataract one that's going. Mickaeel Collier, telling us all about OCAF, the foundation, and about the concept of Waqf. When we come back, we're going to talk about a very exciting project that they're currently running.